All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Conquer Cast. We are all blessed today to have the legend himself, Jim Shockey, who just an incredible life, an incredible example, an incredible adventurer, hunter, husband, father, all these things. I'm so excited to spend some time and attention with you today. Thank you for taking some of your time. I know you're all over the place right now, all over the world, traveling, writing, doing so much. So it means a lot to me and the Mountain Ops community that you would join us here today on the Conquer Cast.
No, it's my pleasure. I wouldn't have missed it. It took
Uh,
us some time to match schedules, but now we'll make the best of the next hour.
We will. This will be great, and I truly do appreciate it. You were so kind to respond quickly to this request, and I think at the time when I reached out, I was actually with your son-in-law Tim, and just kind of I'll jump in a little bit. I want to talk about your history in the outdoors and the things that you've done, the accomplishments, but this being the Conquer Cast, we try to equip our listeners with different tools that can help them conquer in life, whether it's out on the mountain or the metaphoric mountains of life, where it's maybe challenges that we faced, and you've got a wonderful life full of experience that you can share, and so I want to hit on some important topics, but one of those would be family. I've spent some time with your family over the last few years. I was able to make it out with my wife to visit you and your wife a few years ago. That turned into something that I wasn't expecting, and we expected maybe a dinner and then a 30-minute interview. Turned into a day and a half or 2 days shared with you in your home. Your wife cooking us meals. She took my wife and Joe's wife shopping. You took me and Joe out on the golf course, which who gets to go golfing with Jim Shockey when they're not a golfer. And now I've become a golfer, but I was. You just made us feel at home, and you were so welcoming, so hospitable, and it just gave me a glimpse into who you truly are and the heart and soul of you and your wife, and what matters most. And then this last year, I've spent some time with Eva as she came to Mountain Ops, and we did the podcast with her and did a special Mother's Day episode. And then I got to go to South Africa with Tim, and just wow, what an incredible individual. And so as I look at you and what you're passing on, I mean, it's evident in the lives of your children, which is a major blessing. And I'll spend whatever time I can with the Shockey family because of how incredible and grounded and focused you are on doing good. So talk about that real quick. I know you're proud of your children, the things that they're doing. What is it like to watch them growing and developing and becoming what they are in life?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's no greater compliment that you could give me than talking about my children, Brandon and Eva, and that they're good people doing good work for other people, and family is the most important thing. It always has been the most important thing that I've ever set my mind to doing. I've always kept that higher than career, higher than business, higher than anything. And I mean, I've always looked at it as, okay, that's another added degree of difficulty to being successful.
Mm,
And you want money, you want freedom, you want whatever your goal is. Big giant collections like my museum here, they all have to be subservient to family. I don't think you're successful if you've lost your family, because you're too focused on your job. And now if you weren't compatible with your spouse, that's one thing. But if you've walked away from love and your soulmate, and to have more money or more whatever your perceived success is, whether it's in sports or anything, I don't consider that a success for me
yeah.
personally. I wanted family too, and success would come if it came.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's no greater compliment, like I say, to tell me that my children are wonderful, good people. So
Yeah, just
and
incredible. Yeah, incredible people. And to go with what you're saying, there's a quote that I've heard that says, "Success, no amount of success can compensate for failure in the home," and it's so true. But I saw that shine through when we were out there with you. I see that in the content that you create. But then getting to spend some time, and I'm super excited. My wife actually gets to go to Alaska with Eva in August. They're going to go on a fly fishing trip. It's my wife's first fly fishing trip, and so she's excited to spend some time with Eva, and they're doing wonderful things. The heart and soul of Eva and Tim, I've gotten to know a little bit more recently, and who they are, and just the caring, giving people. But that starts somewhere, and it starts in the home that you and Luis created, and so. I want to dive a little bit into that. Was that kind of the home that you grew up in as well, with examples from your father, and how did that? Why has family been so important to you?
yeah, I mean, I grew up in a strong family for sure. My mother and father were married for almost 60 years before they both passed, and the example that they set was an example that I took upon myself to be the minimum level of what I was going to try and do with my own family.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have any money. Grew up in a trailer park, and the conversations when we finally did it, buy a house. I was about grade, I don't know, 5. The the conversations were that dad would get laid off and whether we'd lose this mortgage. I didn't know what a mortgage was. I
Yeah.
knew my parents were fearful, and I mean every conversation, every dinner, and they were fearful. I was terrified. So
Mm,
so I but I understood that they cared about family. My dad gave up his love of flying airplanes
mm,
to raise a family. He never spent. I mean, he never bought himself a new rifle until his 1954 model, whatever it was, uh, basically was so scratched and old that it would barely fire. He finally bought himself a new rifle. He just didn't do it. He was selfless, and
mm,
I thought that was great. It was wonderful because he cared about the family so much. But I set a little bit higher, loftier goals. I had more opportunities. He came out of the depression, the dirty
yeah.
30s, and it's just different. You get a job and you stick with that job for 50 years.
Yeah.
I wanted the family part, but I wanted a little more than worrying about a mortgage every day on
Yeah.
at the table in front of your kids. So yeah, they I grew up in a very similar, family oriented family, but I I, um, I guess Louise and I set higher standards for
Mm,
our children. My dad wanted me to do the same thing he did, get a job, and that's what you did. He
yeah.
didn't know there's alternatives to that. So I said, we could say Louise and I set higher standards for our kids and expected them to achieve it. And,
Yeah.
and made a nurturing family that allowed for that, allowed for the success.
That's incredible, and I think that's the goal, is to have kind of ladder up as family, and you come from one thing and you learn and you grow, and then you try to you're ambitious in life, and you try to add upon that, and that's what our mission here at Mountain Ops is all about, is to help people conquer more, and it may be more than what their parents were able to give, and now they want to give more to their children, and so there's just this ability to improve and progress and evolve over time. Did your love of the outdoors, was that sparked with your father? Was that sparked at a child in childhood, or where did this all begin for you? And did you imagine that this would be the career path, and this would be what it would evolve into?
Yeah, I was born a hunter. I mean, my earliest recollections are catching beetle bugs and earthworms, turning over bricks to see what's underneath them. I was already hunting
Yeah.
at 3 years of age. By the time I was 5, I was after mice, and by the time I was 7, I was after gophers, and it just progressed from there. And I loved being on my own and out away from home. Now,
Mm.
to me, it was a giant adventure to go to Beaver Creek, which was probably a 10-mile bike ride. Well, I thought it was 10 miles back then. Now I probably walk it. It's probably a mile, but I thought it was this big adventure off by myself. I wasn't worried about things like that.
Mm.
I loved being in the outdoors, catching snakes and looking at birds' nests and collecting natural history bits and pieces, seashells and insects. So I don't think. I mean, I know my father. Um, he wasn't as spiritually connected to the outdoors as I was.
Mm.
Hunting for him was, those that deer running across a field on opening morning was a hamburger
Yeah.
running across. So you kill it, and you take it home and eat it, and butcher it up by the afternoon. You can be back at work.
Mm.
That was his sort of
Yeah.
outdoor experience. It wasn't. Dad, let's sit here for the whole season
Yeah.
and wait for a great big buck and hope it comes on the last day in the last minute.
Yeah.
And we got to hunt the whole 2.5 months. Like, why be done on the first day?
Yeah.
So yeah, Dad. But again, he came from a different era. They did not have the luxury of having a spiritual connection with the outdoors,
Mm.
and that's just timing in when you're
Yeah.
born. He may have had that if he was given the opportunity when he was young, but he
Yeah.
couldn't. He had to work. He had to do chores. He had to get a job. He had to, make enough money to pay for his extravagances,
Yeah.
of which I was one, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't think it came from my dad nearly as
Okay.
much. I had an aunt on my mom's side that we were kindred spirits in terms of catching frogs and
Mm.
wanting to go down to the creek and see tadpoles and the baby fish and trapping them. She was a fascinating lady, my auntie B. So I'm not so sure that it's someday they're not going to identify a gene,
Mm.
isolated gene that says you are this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. I had Nick Hoffman on my podcast yesterday, and nobody in his family hunts, but he's an
Mm.
avid hunter all around the world.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
how can that be? It wasn't nurturing.
Yeah.
It's something else, and maybe we'll find out that it's a gene. So no, it didn't come from my dad, not as much as what I
Yeah.
would have loved it to be.
Yeah.
It just what it is.
Well, it's interesting because it was same for me. I'm when Mountain Ops started, that's when I started hunting, and I wasn't sure, but I've come to find that I think it was in my blood, and I think it just skipped a generation, and it wasn't maybe in my dad's blood, but I took my mom on our first elk hunt, and as we're driving on the side by side out to the area we're going to go, she just grabbed my arm and she said, "Trevor, this is in my blood," and so I think that there is something that is genetic there, and it was for her, it was she couldn't get enough of it, and there was more of a spiritual connection for her out. What when you talk about that, this spiritual connection to hunting and the outdoors, what do you mean? What does that mean to you?
I think that we as hunters are incredibly blessed because we can get in touch with our ancestral soul.
Mm.
We can reach back in time to our antecedents' time and ancestors' time and share a feeling that we know they shared back then. They weren't all excited about, going to a movie premiere and seeing some movie star walk by them, in glitter. I mean, yeah, that's exciting for people, I guess, but we have something that's far deeper and far more ancient.
Yeah.
Um, so the spiritual connection for me is truly that ability to know that I'm doing exactly what brought us all to the dance today,
Mm.
and it's the same feeling when I sneak up on that deer or that moose or that bear that my those that were before us had that same, and it's when you do that, every hunter knows it, that feeling of
Yeah.
it's not adrenaline. People say no, it's not adrenaline, and I mean, there's a lot of rah rah, whatever, big buck down or whatever, all that stuff. But if we truly sit still and look at that animal that we've just taken with the respect and reverence and understanding of the weight of that responsibility of taking a life, if we truly take that moment, we're in touch with our ancestral soul, and there's nobody else out there. I don't care how many touchdowns you get. I don't care how many billions of dollars you have. Y- That's not the same thing. It's yeah, maybe it's an adrenaline rush, jumping out of an airplane or squirrel shooting all over the place, but it's not the same. That's not
Yeah.
the feeling we have, and it's also not about putting yourself in danger. It's about it's about getting there, getting the animal, and bringing it back.
Yeah.
That's the symbolic hunt that we all
Yeah.
do, but it's not symbolic when we stand there in that cathedral that's our outdoors, and and with reverence
Yeah.
and thinking about that animal. So it's that's what it is. The spiritual connection for me
Uh,
is touching your ancestral soul. We're fortunate.
No, I absolutely love that. Yeah, it's there's so much involved in life when you're out hunting, and there's life giving life, and there is life from those that have gone before that I definitely feel connected to. I didn't know my grandpa, but I have photos of him, with his rifle and with his buck or his bull, and my mom actually holding that as well. And so when I found those, I asked my mom, "You hunted?" And she said, "No, it was my dad's." But every time he brought it home, I felt like I was connected to something there. So when I was able to take her out on her first hunt, there's life from those ancestors that you feel in your heart and your soul. There's the creation all around, which gives life and is alive and living, and then this animal that's continuing to give life through its life. And so I love the respect and the reverence that you give it. And it's one thing that I've learned through you, watching you over the years, being a new hunter that started later on in life, looking to people like you for that experience, because that's what I wanted to feel. That's what I felt. And you describe it so well. Um, was there a moment, growing up, or where you knew, okay, this will be my life's work. This is where I'll spend my time. This is where I'll, develop my career and provide for my family. You grew up doing it because you're a hunter. It's in your blood. You're doing these things because you love it. And then all of a sudden it is what you end up doing for a living and for your family.
Yeah, when I was 10 years old, as I said, I grew up in a trailer park, and I maybe it was escapism, but I could go to the library and get National Geographic, and I could look at it, and I determined at the age of 10 two things: that I was going to write a novel, and I loved reading by then, and I was going to have a natural history museum. So I would go through National Geographic and say, I'm going to go there. I want to see these people. And I was just as fascinated back then with their cultural objects, their art, as I was the animals that I'd see in National Geographic. I'm going to go there. Well, I needed to go hunt those animals because it was a natural history museum that I had envisioned at that
Mm.
age. I could have told you at 10
Wow.
years of age what would be in this museum that I'm sitting in right now in our edit suite. I could have told you what was going to be in here. I had no idea. And it was pie in the sky, how I was going to achieve that. But I knew if I didn't make choices that took me this way, away from that goal, and I always made choices that kind of kept me on that pathway, it would happen.
Mm.
It might take, well, more than half a century, which it did take, but I knew that I would be doing that.
Mm.
Now, turning it into a career, like I dealt in antiques. I had three antique stores in Vancouver and one on Vancouver Island. And Ralph Lauren, I furnished all his Ralph Lauren country
Mm.
stores when he was setting up that franchise, not Ralph Lauren Polo, Ralph Lauren Country. And he basically bought me out of my antique businesses and allowed me to reorient
Mm.
back to the hunting world, as an actual career, the opening side of it. Um, so so yeah, I knew a long, long, long time ago. I didn't know the exact steps. Now, once I
Yeah.
was a little bit older, and 1984, I wrote my first hunting article, and I did that because I saw the benefit of Rachel Newman from what is it, Country Living magazine. I don't know if it's still going, but Country Living magazine was a monstrous magazine back in the early '80s,
Mm.
and Rachel Newman, the editor, did three articles on my collection, and I saw
Mm.
what that did to my business. It just catapulted it to one of the premier antique stores in Vancouver. If anybody visited
Wow.
it, all the movie stars, everybody. So I saw what her articles did for my business back in the early '80s. So in 1984, I was already by then I knew, yes, I'm going to be making a living in the outdoor industry.
Mm.
I just needed to sort out how I was going to make that happen. So I was married that year to Louise, and I wrote my first article from my first hunting magazine because I felt, why would I wait for Rachel Newman? Why don't I write the article about myself?
Mm.
It's a self promotion, whatever you want to call it. But I knew that I needed a profile in the outdoor industry to make a living in that industry. And I knew I didn't want to sell t shirts because, yeah, that's cool. And it's in the industry, outdoor t shirts, whatever, camo. I didn't want to be
Yeah.
doing that because during the hunting season, what are you doing? You're selling t shirts.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be hunting during the hunting season. I
Yeah.
wanted to be hunting during the off hunting season. I wanted to be hunting all year round. So I knew I had to get into the outfitting side of it, and so by 1984, what was I, 26 years old? I had already charted that pathway, and it
Wow.
was right at the same time that video cameras, the home video cameras, VHSs were coming out, and then the 8 millimeter, and then high eight, and super eight, and so you could actually make your own shows.
Mm.
And I could see that coming as well. And also the cable networks, there was 1,000 cable networks. Before that, there was ABC, NBC, and CBS, four or three networks. That was it. So there was no television, hunting television on there since the 60s, really.
Mm.
So then you had ESPN coming on, ESPN2, all these TNN, and they didn't have content. So I was going, oh, they're going to need content. So why don't I start videoing? You're right, make a profile, start videoing, and be ready for when these guys need content on their networks. And so that's why I got into the television fairly quickly with the outdoor channel when they were NASA stage. So yeah,
That's
I knew
awesome.
by the age of probably 20. Well, it was before 80. It was 82. So yeah, 25 years old, 26 years old. I knew exactly how I was going to accomplish what my goal was, to make this museum and
That's
live a
amazing.
life, write a novel.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I've been there, and knowing that desire came at the age of 10 to have this museum, and then 26 knowing how to do it. When we came, you took us on a little private tour, VIP tour of the facility, and you were just putting everything onto iPads so that people could click on every artifact or every animal and learn from you. I think it's your voice on all of them, and I don't know how many thousands of artifacts. But this hunt for you has not just been a hunt for animals. This has been a hunt for all that's been created by the hand of man, and these artifacts are incredibly. I mean, I don't know how somebody would get through that in a week. I mean, you spend somebody's got to go there and spend a lot of time to get through it all. But I loved it at the time. We were there to kind of film some of that, interview you, and then do a giveaway for somebody to go and visit the Hanneman Museum. And then COVID hit, and so it kind of threw those plans out the window. But I think we could probably bring that footage back and do the same thing. So maybe for you listeners, subscribe and make sure you're listening to these, because maybe just maybe we'll send you to the Hanneman Museum and have that experience. Um, you went through and recorded every one. How many do you know? How many are titled and tagged, and how many artifacts you have there for somebody to walk through and
You know,
learn?
I I'll just back it up a little bit to answer the question, but I don't believe you own anything. You're just a steward of it while you're alive.
Amen.
So everything in here, in the land, the building, all the contents, Louise and I decided when she was still alive that we would donate it all to a foundation. So we
Mm.
started the process of creating the foundation because I want to be able to handcuff the board of directors with my directives from the grave. They're not going to be able to politicize this, no matter what the winds of public opinion are doing at any given time, ideologies that are popular at the time. It's a museum, and it's going to stay exactly like it is.
Wow.
So, back to your question, we're in the process right now of actually photographing every single object in this museum, and we're not even halfway through, and we're already up in the 10,000 objects range. So yeah, there'll be 20,000 items in here for sure, and
Wow.
maybe more. So, you know, now of those, how many are actually, have the iPads? It's expensive to do these
Yeah.
little 2 to 3 minute vignettes. Like it's like a baby television show, a
Yeah.
2 to 3 minute television show. So what does it cost to produce a 20-minute television show, 20 to 30 minute television show? That's kind of what goes into doing
Wow.
20 to 30 of the, or not even 10 of these little curations. So, my guys, Todd's in the background right now listening, going, don't bring this up. Don't bring this up, because we've done, I don't know, hundreds, but we're certainly nowhere near the tens of thousands of those
Yeah.
curations that we need to do. But we're working on it slowly but surely. Everything comes out of our pocket. There's no government funding in here.
Yeah.
This is purely, and it's all donation only. As I said, I grew up in a trailer park. At a museum like this, I would have been in heaven, but I could not have afforded a $1 cover charge.
Yeah.
I would have to sit outside and drool and feel shame that I
Yeah.
couldn't go in. So it'll never be like that. I don't care if there's 20 kids in a family and they don't have 5 cents. They can come into this museum anytime they want and learn. And it'll always be like that. I'll give it an endowment to cover expenses for the next 40 years,
Wow.
as well as the donation. So
It's beautiful.
it's going to stay just like this for the community. I made my living off of a big community out there, but this community is going to benefit. I'm going to give it all
Yeah.
back to the community.
Yeah.
And also, it's a way of stopping Eva from having a giant garage sale and turning all this into Chanel purses.
Well, I understand. Isn't the building was the school that Eva and your and Brenlin went to, and now it's
Yeah,
converted into the Hand of Man.
yeah, exactly. And you're allowed to brag about your children. This went to grade 1 to grade 6. This school, Maple Bay Elementary, and both of them were the valedictorians out of their graduating years. You're like I said, you're
Believe
allowed
it.
to brag about your spouse and your children. So
100%, 100%. No, I love it. Now, you've hunted all over the world for animals, for artifacts, for all these things. Was there a hunt that pushed your limits, maybe physically, mentally, emotionally, that you can share, and how you conquered that?
sure. I mean, I've been asked that question before, and there's a couple of hunts come to mind because they're hunts that were pivotal in my career. And the first one was my first serious backpack hunt for thin-horn sheep, Dall sheep, up in the Yukon. Now, I'd hunted sheep many times before and never got anything, but I wasn't all in on a hunt, and I didn't pay for those hunts. It was just me crawling around mountains and
Hmm.
realizing what a crappy sheep hunter I was, and how hard it is to find a sheep. So I bought the hunt from Charlie Stricker uh, back in, I don't know, back in the early '90s, maybe late '80s actually, and Rod Cullen was my guide. And I remember Charlie Stricker coming up to us before we went in. We were going to fly in, and then airplane drops us off at a lake, and then we're going to hike, traverse to, I don't know, 30 miles to another lake, hopefully with a ram on our back at some point. And I remember Charlie Stricker, he was old school. And he walked up and he said, "Hold your hands like this." So I held my hands like that, and I go, "Why?" And he took a box of granola and he poured it into my hands. And he said, "There's your food for the next 12 days. And I looked at it and say, "Well, Charlie, it's a 14-day hunt. And I mean, I'm going to eat this the first day." And he said, "That's your problem." And he turned around and walked away.
Well,
That was my introduction to old school sheep hunting. Those guys were so tough. And Rod Cullen, my guide, is one of the toughest guys I've ever met. He wore little moccasin rubbers,
ah,
so little, just little ankle high rubber, soft rubber that you'd put over top of your shoes.
yeah.
And he had a big pair of wool socks that he'd put on. And I remember, the first day we hiked X amount of miles, whatever, and set up our little pup tents. And the next morning he got up and he, put his wool socks on, then he pulled the little moccasin rubbers on, and he walked over to the creek. And I thought he was going to get water. He walked into the creek and stood there and then walked back out, slop, slop, slop. I said, what are you doing? Your feet are soaking wet. Your socks are soaking wet. Your pants. He said, "I don't want to pussyfoot around any water hole for the rest of the day." So he just soaked himself right off the bat.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's when I realized, oh boy, there's another level of tough to what I thought I
No
was.
kidding.
And we hunted. it was the most, it's Yukon weather, miserable, raining, sleeting, snowing, no sun, always windy. I was cold, and my granola was gone within about 3 days. You know, and so I was literally killing gophers,
Yeah.
like little mountain, whatever they are, rodents, and every mushroom I saw, I was a bit of a mycologist, so I was eating them. Every blueberry patch
It's awesome.
and snowberry patch, I was just wolfing this stuff down, and I was getting more and more miserable and beat up and tired. Rod would make us take all the water from the bottom, and we'd hike all the way to the top. And the idea was to walk the ridges for miles and miles. You had enough water. There's no water up there. But we'd get to the top, and he'd look and say, "Oh, there's sheep over there. We gotta." So we dump all the water that we just carried up the top of the mountain and back down again, and do the same thing on that range. So I was, and I was young. I was in good shape. I mean, I came out of the national water polo team. I, was a all American swimmer. I mean, I fancy myself in tough
Yeah.
shape. And by day 7, I was just beat. And we saw a ram, a legal ram. So it was the first legal ram we saw in 7 days, and it was just a squeaker, like
Mm.
young, a squeaker. And we looked at that, and I had my muzzleloader. I was going to try and do this with, had the idea of getting the ultimate slam
Yeah.
for muzzleloading with a muzzleloader. And Rod said, "Well, we can go after that ram." And he said, "Your hunt will be over." And he said, "For the rest of your life, you're going to look at that ram and know that you compromised. You
Mm.
know, that's what you want. Let's go kill it." And so that was the moment where I had to decide, holy cow, like I'm miserable right now. I'm wet, cold. I haven't had my sleeping bag's been soaked for a week, and and I can end it right now. I can end it, but he's right. That's not what I had in mind for the. It's just a squeaker. It's a rat. It's not. It's legal, but that's it. And I realized that yeah, I would have had to look at that for the rest of my life,
Huh.
and feel not that I'd accomplished anything, but feel a little bit ashamed that I quit. Is what
Yeah.
essentially it, because I made the kill, getting the animal and getting out of there, more important than what my
Mm.
goal was.
Mm.
And so I turned it down. And by about, the next day, it wasn't quite so bad, and by day 10, I mean, I liken it, we were wolves. I saw Cam
Mm.
Haines, what
Yeah.
Brand produced for him with
Yeah.
100 wolves or whatever. And I mean, we literally were. There was
Mm.
it didn't matter how far we had to walk, water, whatever, food, didn't matter anymore. We were two,
Wow.
yeah, just rangy, tough, hard ass hunters in that mountain. And it was day 12. We spotted a ram that it's still in my museum today. It's just a
Oh, really?
heavy, broomed off way over the nose, like monster. And I remember seeing that thing. Just looked like it was wearing a football helmet on his head. And I said, "Rod, I think I found our ram." And he looks. He said, "Holy cow, let's go." And I mean, by that point, it didn't matter. 10 miles was nothing.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a challenge. And that hunt made me realize that when I think, or ever thought in the past or in the future would think that I was near my limit, I wasn't even close to it. It
Wow.
was purely discomfort. That's all I was feeling was discomfort. And discomfort doesn't kill you. It warns you that, okay, your next step may be life threatening if you push harder, but it's just a warning. And it's, so you're wet, so you're cold. Who cares? Walk through the creek and get your feet wet and shut up.
Mm.
Just and I realized that I was capable of doing that at that level with a guy that is as tough as I've ever met, like truly tough,
Mm.
not muscled up,
Not muscle. Yeah.
workout tough. I'm talking about a guy that's just tough, and that means that comes from here.
Yeah.
This stuff doesn't do that.
Yep.
This is here. The wire, just wire. Hard
Mm.
steel. That's tough.
That's
And
awesome.
I was there with him, and I walked every step with him, and I realized, okay, I can do whatever I set my mind to from here on in. There's no hunt's going to push me past my limit. It's just not.
Wow. That's awesome. That's incredible. What a great lesson for those that are listening, and for myself, and on perseverance and grit and determination, and moving past the discomfort, which is all it is, discomfort. It reminds me, because you talked about him saying, "Hey, you could do that now, but we've got some time left. Do you want to compromise now?" When we were with you there in your Hanneman Museum, you shared a line that I have used over and over again, and I've adapted it to so many settings. And that the words from you were, "Let time do the hard work." Do you use that often, or is that something that came up in our interview? And what does
Oh,
that? What does? Because I honestly, I've used that in everything I've done since I met with you. And what does that mean to you? Letting time do the hard work.
too many people, we're so used to in our society 20 seconds. I mean, social media, you got 2 seconds to catch somebody's attention, and if you don't get that reward within that period of time, it, we've lost the ability to look into the future and know that that's going to be the result if we start here today and do this much and this much and this much and this much and this much. And I have used that since I was 10 years old. As I
Okay.
said, this museum and writing my novel, I finally got it out last year. In October was my book tour. Simon and Schuster in New York City published
Yeah.
my novel, Call Me Hunter, and that's a 50-year goal that I literally let time make it happen. Because you can't force things, and you can't, if you try and get the result too quickly, you'll never be there for the long term, and put in the perseverance that it takes to actually succeed at
Mm.
some things. Now, I'm not saying that, you know I don't know, lifting that rock, you get instant satisfaction, great, you don't need to let time do the work for you. But you want to lift that boulder, you're going to have to work at it, and you're going to have to get to a point where you're capable of lifting that boulder. Well, that takes time, and it means focus and discipline, and and not letting yourself be sidetracked again. We get caught in the golden handcuffs. Well, I want more money. I want a second truck. I want a bigger TV. That guy's got a nicer boat than my boat, and or even he's got a bigger jet than I have. Whatever your standards are, you get caught on that. You're gonna lose sight of your goal, which again,
Yeah.
back to the original, family should be number one always. But as you every single day, if you work towards it, accomplish something every single day towards whatever goal you set for yourself. And time, you do that. You write 10 words a day, write 100 words, write 1,000. You're gonna have a novel at the end of that.
Mm.
And just let time do it.
Mm.
It's not complicated, but you do have to put some effort in. You want to get in shape. I tell people all the time, and thankfully people are starting to look at their health nowadays,
Yeah.
realizing that's a little bit of your job is to look after yourself, your health. I mean, there's things you can't do anything about. There's just genetic or bad luck. It can happen, but people let themselves go, and they gain too much weight, and they're not comfortable, and they don't like what they look like in the mirror, so they try and change it overnight. They put on their jogging shoes, and they put on their jogging shorts and their Lululemons, whatever they got, and down the road they go. I see it all the time. They're trying to change their image. I guess their body image in a week.
Yeah.
There's some days they do it and then they quit because it's too hard. No, no, just go for a walk. You'll walk half a mile, and next day walk half a mile, and the next day walk half a mile, and maybe in a month you'll walk a mile. And then maybe in 2 or 3 months you'll walk 2 miles, and then but don't try and do it in the shortest amount of time you have. Just do a little bit, and every single day your body goes, oh, okay, and oh, okay, and in a year you're going to be exactly
Mm.
looking like you want to look and feeling like you want to feel, and you're going to be more confident. You're going to love yourself, but you hate yourself if you look in the mirror now. I mean, and trust me, we all look in the mirror and go, "Hey, I could fix this." You should see me looking at myself right now on the screen, like, "Ugh."
You're
but
looking great, man.
yeah, good from far, but far from good. But you have to, we have to think in terms of years and decades to accomplish goals as opposed to instant gratification. I get asked,
Mm,
how do you get to do what you do? So it's real simple. You start working and you work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year for 40 years, and you'll be sitting right in this chair. But that's time. That's just
mm,
time, and you don't quit, and you don't sidetrack yourself, and it literally you'll end up where you want to end up if you
yeah,
if you just do this every day towards that goal, and you don't have to you don't have to run a marathon the first week,
yeah.
but you have to do a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and keep doing that for years and years, and you end up exactly where you set the goal to end up.
Yeah. Well, that captures the essence of what it means to conquer more. And I just thank you for using those words years ago when I sat there behind the camera listening to you. And those were the things I wrote down. And, using that time, I know you said, stop and smell the roses, enjoy things around you and especially the family that surrounds you. And so I just took so much from that and have tried to apply it and looked at my life and, I believe that the God who gives us the time we have gives us the time we need. We just exhaust our resource, or our efforts, or our energy in the wrong priorities at times, and so we have to be disciplined in how we prioritize what we want to get to. And yeah, looking at you, 40 years of doing that, and at the age of 10, having a discipline to say this is what I want to go after. I'm not sure exactly, and I think it's okay not to know exactly how it's going to happen. It's just putting simple things in place daily that keep you on that path. You
Yeah,
know.
and make decisions that don't take you away from that path.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's
So
not
how
hard.
how do you taking this back to what matters most is where we started this conversation with family? How have you used that to shape your approach as a father and with that what is what's the legacy you've always wanted to pass on to your children and grandchildren who love you so much?
You, you, I mean, that all starts with your choice of a spouse, right? Your who you choose as a soulmate will determine what you're going to be able to do with your children in mind.
Mm.
So whatever reason, an angel came from heaven and walked this earth and chose a scruffer, but you could have chosen any single guy on this planet, that was single, and billionaires and kings and world leaders. They were after her. I mean, Louisa's story is incredible. The people and she I was living in a basement suite with a 5'6" ceiling, so I had to hunch down all the time and avoid hitting the little rafters. And I had it my bedroom. It was my workshop when I was trying to make a living in the antique business. Starting out, I didn't have a lot of money, so I was 26 years old, living in that basement, and I put thick poly plastic around and clear plastic because I was doing all the sanding just right there too in the basement for all my furniture I was refinishing. So that the outside of that plastic was covered in dust, and I made a little plastic doorway that this this is the guy that Louise chose, and like I say, she was an angel. She said, "You work with your hands," and I respect that. And she didn't want it. She said, "I want a family. I want one man to love, and I want to raise children and give that my entire life to that." Not she could have. She had a 4-octave range singing voice. She could have done opera. She could have done pop. She could do Whitney Houston. Any of those songs, you wouldn't know if it was Whitney Houston singing or not. She never showed anybody that.
Wow.
She had this and was absolutely gorgeous. Was a fabulous dancer. I mean, she could have been the biggest of the big, and anything she chose to do could have married the richest of the rich, and she chose a scruffer, and that is the start of raising your children properly,
Mm.
because you have to choose your spouse right. She said, "I don't want to worry about bills, and you can work. I want to focus on raising our children that we didn't have at that point, but we
Yeah.
talked about all this, and that that allowed me to do what I did for my career, and she supported me all the way
Yeah.
along. Louise, I got to go. She also said that I took up a lot of space in her room, so once a week she'd say, "Isn't there, I hear a moose calling." Like she would actually somewhere I hear a moose calling somewhere around the world, don't you have to go?
That's awesome.
She said she'd be, and she devoted her every ounce of her life, and truly did, gave her life to her children, and yeah, she that's it comes from choosing well
Yeah.
on your soulmate. That's the start of the children, and then the rest falls in place. To apply the let time do your work. For Louise and I, it was different because I did what I could. I was, the disciplinarian. Ask Eva that. She to this day thinks I was a tough dad. Well, excuse me, Eva was a tough child. The truth of the matter. In fact, there's a quick funny story. She when I came home one time from a trip, and Louise said to me, he said, you have to, you got to go bond with your daughter. And Eva was about 14 at the time, and she had her bedroom. It was all painted black or whatever, goth, and something with spider webs hanging. I don't remember exactly. She'll deny.
Yeah, I've earned that one.
Louise said, you should go in there and just have a father daughter time and talk, and then Louise sat outside, and I walked through that doorway, closed it, and I came out about half an hour later. Louise said it looked like I was shredded by tigers and lions. It was just trashed, like I walked in, holy cow, I'm never going to do that again.
Oh,
There
that's
was no
hilarious.
bonding. That was just, I think Louise was just feeding me to Eva. So yeah, but again, unconditional love. We had a saying. Louise actually had a saying when Eva was, Brad. I don't even bring him up because he was just the easiest guy in the world. But when Eva, was in one of her moods, and would be trying to incite a riot, basically in the house, Louise's saying to herself was, "Shut up, Louise, and go to your room." So she would lock herself in her own room
To
and
get away.
let
Uh,
Eva, rampage around the house looking for, a fight. Well, there's no fight. It was not a. I mean, and I'm making fun of this because Eva was a wonderful. Ask
yeah.
anyone those days how wonderful your daughter is. Yeah, because you don't live with her.
Well, it sounds like to me, maybe that you and Eva are somewhat alike, right?
And she'll hate hearing that. She'll
Uh,
hate hearing that.
well, I
So
think she admitted it on the when she was on the podcast with me. She said, and you see it now. I mean, look at the path she's taken, and following in her father's footsteps, and just putting out incredible content and about life and family and the hunting and the outdoors. And I understand, that didn't start until after or during college for her in South Africa, right, with her first hunt. But it's so often those battles until as youth we then mature and we begin to appreciate and understand, look at how much my father and obviously the mother as well has played such a role, and then they start to take on some of those same opportunities in life. So I just think it's
yeah,
incredible.
and all everything we went through was always were smiling. It didn't matter. I mean, you kind of know, and I mean the love was always there, and
Yeah.
the the respect for each other, even though you might be bumping heads a little bit, it was never bad. But
Yeah.
yeah, when Evie came back from university, she had never hunted. Louise
Yeah.
thought, she's going to be well, she was a competition salsa dancer, and came back from university in Australia, and was this beautiful young lady, graceful, like Louise could see her following in Louise's footprints, and I remember we sat there and Evie said, I want to learn how to hunt. I mean,
You're like
I said, what? And she was talking to me, and I said, Eva, you haven't talked to me since you're 14 years old, and now you want to learn how to hunt. And she's 21. And actually, I told Louise when Eva turned 14, I said, you know what? I'm going hunting. I'll see you in 7 years. And that was these are so we always laughed about it in our family, no matter what. And Evie, even when she was, ready for battle, she'd always, break down in a smile and laughing. You could not because she just so loved. And yeah, she Brandlin is like Louise, just, sweet, kind, gentle. incredibly talented.
Yeah.
If I had that fingernail worth of her talent, I would have been insufferable. I'd have been Mick Jagger strutting around. The good Lord was smart enough to never give me that kind of talent, and Brandon has it in abundance. I mean, it's
Mm,
ridiculous. So he's like Louise, and I'm not saying Evie's not talented and has a lot of Louise in her. She's obviously 50%
yeah.
Louise, but personality wise, and drive wise, ambitious wise, the difference for Eva, I think her job is, or her chosen pathway is a far more difficult pathway than I had to, because she's
Mm,
also a wonderful mother.
yeah.
And that, I saw what Louise, what she put in. And I'm sorry, I was never designed to be a mother. I'm just
Mm,
not. I'm not. I'm who I am. And
yeah.
maybe it's not politically correct to say those kind of things nowadays,
Mm,
but
makes
Eva
sense.
is, and that she takes after Louise. So she gives as much as Louise did, but then she also runs her little empire
Yeah.
on the side. And she, and honestly, she's not following in my footprints. I am trailing behind her. Social media is, I'm always, oh yeah, I got it, picked up another few thousand followers, and I'm getting closer to even. Then she'll
Mm.
bump up, or I'll lose a few, and then so I'm actually following in her footprints, and what
Mm,
she posts, her lifestyle posts, they're fabulous.
they are.
They're just wonderful, positive, inspiring posts that I mean, I wish I could do that. I
Yeah.
wish I was that able. So she's, yeah, no, I don't think Eva's following in my
Mm,
footsteps. She's charting her own course, and I'm following in her wake.
yeah.
Building
Well,
a.
that's amazing. There's a scripture that says a child shall lead them, right? And we learn so much from our children. But your children are such a wonderful compliment and just reflection of the love, the life, the grit, the hard work, the determination, the grace that you guys have instilled in them. And so, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more. I'm a father of four children, and I hope that there's things similar to this. One of the lessons I hope they learn is to let time do the hard work. That they're going to face challenges, they're going to face mountains, and it's okay. It's actually for our good, for our benefit, for our growth and our perspective, and that perspective brings about so much empathy in life. So, you've faced one of those mountains that. Maybe at times seems unsurmountable. You one of those things that's going to pass through all of our lives at some point, with the passing of your wife, and it wasn't hidden because you guys are so out. You're out there. Your lives are kind of on display, and that's got to be difficult at times. But we appreciate the ability to look in and see a little bit behind the curtains, what's going on in your life and how you approach it. What has that mountain been like? I mean, all of us here praying for you, praying for your wife, praying for Eva. Then the heartbreaking news comes that this temporary separation has occurred with your soulmate. How do you approach that? How do you deal with that? What's been going on in your life that's allowed you to, in some way, conquer these mountains as they come about, and this mountain in particular?
Yeah, that was the greatest challenge by nothing else compared to anything I've ever faced in my life. And I don't know that there is anything else. I haven't lost a child,
Yeah.
so I can't imagine that. And the reason, and same thing for, someone that hasn't lost their soulmate, they can't imagine what it's like.
Yeah.
And I say that you can't imagine it. You're right. You can't imagine it. And the reason is because imagination doesn't exist at the depths where sorrow exists.
Mm.
Sorrow of that true, deep, dark, black. It's all-consuming grief. Imagination can't live down there. So nobody that's looking in from the outside can imagine it, except for people that have gone through it. And you know what? Everyone listening right now, we're all going to go through it. If you're the
Mm.
lucky one, you're the first one. But is that really that lucky? Louise didn't consider herself that lucky when she knew she was leaving, me particularly. The children had spouses, they had soulmates, and they had their own children. So Louise was satisfied. She knew they would be, because that's what you have a soulmate for, is to
Yeah.
help you through those times of grieving and grief. But she knew she was leaving me on my own, and it was 39 years, 113 days, 14 and a half hours that we were together,
Hmm.
and magically fairy tale bonded together. We literally lived a fairy tale. We didn't fight. There was no. We were in deep, deep love
Hmm.
from day one. I mean, I was head over heels in love with her from day one, and even more so the day she passed. I mean, it was, you can't describe it to anybody, because the only people that understand are the ones that have gone through it.
Yeah.
But but you have a choice. You have a choice, and the way we dealt with it, Louise stayed alive, I know, for months to make sure I was prepared for what was going to, the
Hmm.
inevitable. So we would sit and talk and hold hands for 10 hours each day. And we knew she was not unwell 5 years before, 2 years before she passed. They diagnosed it finally accurately. I had her at the Mayo Clinic before that, and they misdiagnosed it. But when they finally diagnosed what she had, then and they said, look, you got 3 to 6 months to live. She lasted 2 years, and I know she stayed alive at the end in great pain, um, to make sure I was prepared.
Hmm.
So we talked 10 hours each day, and
Wow.
we started living day to day. The instant that diagnosis comes and you're given this news, you that's the day you start your grieving process. So if you
Hmm.
lose a spouse that day without any chance to say the things you need to say and want to say or prepare yourself, it would take me 2 years before I would begin to recover. But I had the 2 years
Hmm.
with Louise together, and with her wisdom. I mean, the doctor was crying when she gave her the diagnosis, and Louise, she didn't cry. I mean, I had, you know, tears welling, flowing down my cheeks, and Louise was consoling the doctor, and said, "It's okay. I lived a wonderful life." I mean, she was, and she knew that I was going to be left alone. So she spent that time preparing me and saying, you need to find somebody. You need to, you're not a kind of person that can be out there on your own and lonely and greedy. It's just not me. It's not. And
Yeah.
so she prepared me, and until, so we lived day to day, and then, you know, hour to hour, she said to me, it's time. And I said, I know. And then we lived minute to minute and second to second, and then she was gone. And at that point, I started living second to second, minute to minute, and hour to hour. After a few days, I could make it. I could see I was going to jump off a bridge, and then, eventually got to living day to day again. And what Louise taught me, what that process taught me, was that every single day we have is precious. Every single day is precious. Today is precious.
Hmm.
Tomorrow is precious. And we cannot let yesterday's sorrow steal today's joy. And this is what Louise taught me. You cannot let, the sorrow of my passing steal your tomorrow's joy, today's joy. And that's every morning I woke up and said, today is a precious day. The sun is beautiful, the sky, whatever it's raining, it's beautiful raindrops. There's a flower outside. The dog, look how beautiful it is laying there. Anything to 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 recognize that how precious that day is.
Hmm.
So to waste a day of this precious life that we're gifted in sorrow and grief and wallowing in self-pity and loneliness, it just isn't, it doesn't make sense. Now, I had Louise to help me through those
Yeah.
2 years, to help me see that. She did. She helped me see that. And
Hmm.
and the easy path, and she told me this, the easy path will be to embrace that sorrow, embrace the grief, and just wallow in the self-pity and never let yourself feel joy again. It takes a tremendous amount of strength to let yourself feel joy again, and understand that those 39 years, 113 days, 14 and a half hours that I lived with an angel, that's, I still have that. I still have that, and I hang on to that all the time. Louise's, you see a sunset, there she is. You see a beautiful sunrise, You see the wind blowing the grass. You see the dog running across the field. You see the deer down at the bottom of the field. These are all Louise,
Mm.
and memories and reminders that of those years. So it's not gone, and it's not you haven't moved on from that. But that was a part of your life that is don't let what happened at the end of that incredible fairy tale steal the rest of your own life.
Mm.
And some people, okay, it's everybody's for themselves. Like, some people need that. They need to, that's what they cling to and they hang on to. You know, and that's fine. Whatever it takes for you to get through and not, and find joy again in your life. If you find joy in that, but I can't. Louise is still part of our life every day. And I found
Mm.
a lady now, and it's, you know, whoever says you can't love, more than one person is mistaken.
Mm.
I can tell you that right now. I'm not saying
Yeah,
everybody can, but I know that
it's
there's room
possible.
in my heart for a second love of my life.
Yeah,
Find a second, soulmate that
yeah.
you share life with, and one that doesn't look at Louise as a threat, or
Mm.
that is afraid of, because who can live up to Louise's? You just can't. You can't. So you don't try, but you are who you are, and that's who you. That's what I need right now is
Yeah,
something like that. And so I found a lady named Serena that, and I'm as happy as I ever was. I'm not happier,
yeah.
and I've got, those memories, but Louise's pictures are all through the house. Every single day we talk, we make her salsa. She's here with us every time we go for a walk in the forest, and she shares this life with us.
Mm.
She shares this life, and I know she's exactly where she came from, back in
Yeah,
heaven.
it's
And
awesome.
it was time. It was time for her. She came down, married the scruffer, and we had these wonderful children. She devoted her life to him, and then it was time to go back.
Mm.
And so, for me to be sad and depressed, and I know people say it's too early. Oh my gosh, like you have no idea because you haven't
Yeah.
gone. There's never too early to find joy in your life again for anybody, and begrudge somebody that because they watch Hollywood movies and I pine away for the rest of my life and wear black and a veil, whatever. Go ahead. If that's what it takes for you to somehow find joy in your life is
Mm.
as a martyr, then go ahead.
Yeah.
Fine. It's not for me. There's life, and every day is precious. So it's a long way of basically saying that everybody listening, every single day is precious. You don't know how many you have. Jordan Peterson said that all of us are going to face great sorrow and tragedy someday, and tragic happenings in our life. But we can't avoid it. If you love, you're going to feel it,
Mm.
but you don't know how much time that is. So why waste today doing something that A, you're not happy doing, B, isn't fulfilling your potential. It's not helping you realize your potential. You don't love what you're doing. You're a slave to whatever the things you think you need in your life. So you're wasting today. It's
Mm.
precious. Don't do that. Spend time with your children. Call them, or let them know you love them. Just anything. Look at the sunset. Take time, back to your original comment, to literally smell the roses. At the end, you don't want to be sitting my age and have regrets, because you can't go back and replace those days you lost. So I live every single day. I love it. I mean, I wake up in the morning and go, it's a beautiful day today.
Mm.
And I had a wonderful life for 4 decades. And now I'm having another wonderful life with another lady that understands me and supports me, and that I can love unconditionally. What a beautiful thing this life is. We
Mm.
just have to realize that those little things that sometimes think are, the plumbing broke, or the dishwasher's not working, or, my dog ate one of our chickens, whatever it is. You know, small
Yeah.
things compared to the one precious day you get to live.
Mm. Wow, that was so powerful. I can't express enough appreciation for so many things that you mentioned there, and just taking advantage of seizing the day, carpe diem, right? And focusing our life so that we can experience joy. But you hit on something that hits home very personally to me. You had those 2 years to allow some preparation to occur, and fortunately have a wife that was so intentional about helping you prepare for that. I just think of what a what a selfless and Christ-like, and that's the word that comes to my mind, and how she prepared her soulmate for that separation that is temporary. My And then you mentioned, like, for those that it just happens abruptly to, they may need 2 years of preparation to then get to that same point that you.
Yeah.
My father passed away just a few months before your wife, and it was abrupt. He fell down their stairs. He severed his spinal cord, broke his neck, and so there was no preparation. And we just hit the 2 year mark, and not knowing how to be empathetic in this situation towards my mother, because I haven't not experienced this. I've watched her over the last 2 years. She's suffered. She's gone through this traumatic experience, and it's 2 years, and you'd think, okay, maybe she's doing better now. No, it's difficult. She didn't have that preparation before. So just you sharing that with me, it's this will be a piece that I'll send to her to help her understand that what she's going through takes time. And again, to go back to letting time do the hard work, because they had 55 years of marriage together, and then to lose that person that's by your side, that's smelling the roses with you, and that's
Yeah.
helping you enjoy the sunsets and those moments in life. We need to take advantage of the time. Sorry for the sweaty eyes, but you've definitely struck a chord that I think all of us need to know and remember, and keep in mind.
Yeah, and that harkens back to what you said, how we live out in the public. We consciously do that because we can, by our example,
Mm.
help other people. And I know how many people my words have helped on social media.
Yeah.
There's the naysayers and the haters and the judgers, but the number of people that it helps to share what we, because where do you turn to for that? Where do you turn to? A psychologist who's never gone through it, they have no
Mm.
idea.
Mm.
I don't care who they are, psychiatrists, give me a break. If they haven't gone through it, that's not somebody. and
Yeah.
and if they're using the therapy to you know help themselves get through something, that's not someone you want either,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
it's self-serving. So I I I made that conscious choice. Well, Louisa and I did when she was passing, and I made the choice to continue through it, to share this journey, the difficulties and the challenges, to share it with people and say, this is how I deal with it. This is how and then also to face the criticism where you found somebody, you must not have loved Louisa. Oh my gosh, how pathetic and sad and mean is that for people to say, that I didn't love Louise, because I'm with somebody else now. So that has helped so many other people, and I know it because they DM me. They don't want to be out in the social media front lines in the war and getting criticized and
Mm.
with the trolls. So they DM me and you, they tell me their words are crying when they're telling me that it's helped them realize that what other people, their opinions don't matter. They'll tell me, I found somebody, but my family doesn't want me to. They think I should still be grieving, and my friends all, the true friends will stick by you no matter what.
Mm.
The ones that aren't true friends, they'll judge, and they say, "Oh, you've never the holier than thou," and the virtue signaling crowd. So I made an effort to share what I went through, and if I failed, and if I'm, you know, crash and burn, I'll do it out in public and let
Mm.
people know this can happen to anybody. Even someone that looks like they've maybe, by appearance has been successful at this or that. Um, that uh, or succeeding at it either way. But this is how I did it, and this is the life that I chose for myself, rather than let other people decide for
Mm.
me what I should and shouldn't do, and when I should, what day I'm allowed to be happy again. It's
Yeah.
so, it's just, really okay. So it's too quick. So how long before, like, what day am I allowed to be happy? What day am I allowed to find somebody to love again, to marry again? You
Yeah.
know, I didn't leave my wife for a younger woman. You know, they judge the age of Serena. The mean things.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, about her, which also, when they say she's a gold digger, it's like, oh my gosh, she's, got 3 degrees, including a doctorate of law. She's a lawyer in California, owns homes in Nashville, traveled to 40 countries around the world. This woman, and chose to not have children, and then, other reasons we are made for each other,
Yeah.
and they'll judge the age and say, well, yeah, oh my gosh, so okay, what age would you like me to find somebody? It's got to be my energy level. I travel, 300 days a year. I'm on the
Yeah.
road, going, going, going. I
Yeah.
wake up in the morning, going to go. I'm not going to sit in a rocking chair with. So what, you know, what do you want for me? And that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to show people is it doesn't matter what you
Yeah.
want for me. It's what you need for yourself,
Mm.
and to
So good.
allow yourself to be happy and joyous and not care.
Yeah.
I went through the worst thing I think anyone can go through. You can torture me, and it's not going to be the same as I would have rather have been in Louise's shoes, and
Mm.
I would have traded my life in a heartbeat to give her more time on this planet. But she was going to heaven,
Yeah.
and God wanted her, Christ-like. Yeah, she really was. And that's not hyperbole. I mean, Louise was, when she walked in a room, there was everybody. There was an aura. Everybody,
Oh,
she just had. There was just a peace about her that that anyone that came within her sphere of influence, at all,
yeah.
unless they were so caught up in their own, vainglorious aggrandizement, maybe they would miss it. But
Yeah.
anybody else,
No, my wife and I both felt it, and we don't know you well personally. You haven't spent a lot of time personally with you. Obviously, we know from the public view, but we were the lucky ones that got to spend at least a day with you and her together. And yeah, at the time, I was anxious to come and visit Jim Shockey. We're building this business. We've got this brand. You're this iconic figure, and so quickly we felt welcomed and we felt at home, and then we were brought into the home like I mentioned in the beginning. Yeah, there was something and is something about her that just puts your mind and your heart at ease, knowing that you were around someone that wanted you there, that was welcoming and loving and caring and kind. So what you guys have done, and the focus of your life has been incredible. I love a quote this, and it actually ties along with our core value at Mountain Ops, which is joy. We have 12 core values, one every month. The last one of the year, it's joy, hoping that when we look back on the choices that we've made and the steps we've taken, that we've had moments of joy. But it states that joy has very little to do with the circumstances of our life, and it has everything to do with the focus of our life. And I love the focus that you've put it into intentionally living each day, drowning out the noise from the naysayers and those that are haters and those that would tell you how to live, but you've focused in on what matters most. And that brings about joy and peace. And I'm so grateful that you see her in everything that you do, and when you're out and about throughout the world. I do the same with my father, and different kind of thing with a father than a spouse. But when the clouds are out in the sky, I look to the clouds, and I see them in the clouds, and so it's important we take those times to experience joy that way. I know your time is precious, and so I'm going to wrap this up with one last question. It's a question that I ask every guest on this podcast. I should maybe give a little forewarning of this, but you've already kind of expressed what I think you'll share. But we read a book called it's called How Will You Measure Your Life here at Mountain Ops. We've read it multiple times because it talks about important things in life and our investments in relationships and such. But I like to ask the guests this just in closing. Our guests listening are they're conquerors. They're trying to conquer. We've all got mountains in front of us, and so we listen to an individual like Jim Shockey, and we're inspired. We're inspired by the decisions you've made, the vision that you've had for your life, how you've executed upon it, how you've let time do the hard work. But when all is said and done, Jim, as a conqueror in life, how do you feel you'll measure your life?
by the positive influence I've had on the number of people that I've had that positive influence on. So the more people that I've positively influenced, that like you say, the quote, let time do the hard work. That's an influence on your life, and that's so. There's one. There's only 8 billion more people out
Yeah.
there that I have to try and influence in a positive way. So measure my life is yeah, my the good that I brought into other people's lives.
So,
There's no giving back to the community, the family that I've brought up, and honestly, it's not what people know you for when you're alive; it's what they remember you for after.
mm,
And I'm hoping that there'll be more than a couple generations of people say, he made a difference. The things that he said, the example that he set, that made a difference in my grandfather's life
mm,
or my great grandfather's life, hopefully. And that would be wondrous. For
mm.
me, the measure of my life. I guess I'm not the person to bring out the tape measure, but hopefully there'll be more than just one person out of the 8 billion people out there that will remember me as helping them.
Mm.
That's
It's
so much of my
incredible. I love it. Well, my lights just turned off, so I guess that's our cue that it just went dark. Let's see. Let me hurry and stand up so I can close this. I think I have a time. There we go. Jim, thank you so much. Yes, not just that one quote, but so much of what you do has had an impact on my life, has influenced my life, and those that are listening. I mean, everyone knows about you. Maybe they know about the hunts. Maybe they know about the Hahnemann Museum. Today, we've talked a lot about relationships that matter most. And so I'm sure they know about that as well. But I'm grateful to have spent some time really focused on, you know, today and the precious moments of today and how we need to take advantage of that and really truly experience joy in this journey. And I appreciate that reminder from you. Thanks for your time and your support of Mountain Ops and my family and everything that we're trying to accomplish as well. Truly appreciate it.
It's an honor, and I truly love your Mountain Ops products. I use them all the time, every day. So people out there say, "Oh, yeah, I do. I actually do." Look,
I know you can see it. You can see it. No, I appreciate that very, very much. And so the support's meant the world to us. So
yeah,
thank you.
I'll be there to the end.
You're great. Thanks, Jim. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you.